Remain standing for the jury.
Ms. Brown, we were about to talk about State's Exhibit 26, which is TPD 17, FDLE 44 swab. Oh, I'm sorry, State's Exhibit 63, TPD 126, FDLE 116, which is a swab of the bath bar. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Let the record reflect on showing the witness was marked for identification as defense 12. Do you recognize that?
Yes, this is the profile that I generated, and my initials are on it.
For the swab of the bath bar?
Yes.
And is that a true and accurate depiction of the profiles you developed?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, pursuant to stipulation, I would move into evidence what's been marked for identification as defense 12 and as defense 12.
Any objection? There are. Be admitted.
And just for clarity's sake, this one's not a composite exhibit with the co-filer page because the co-filer kit didn't yield any results in this on
It
this
yielded
one.
only an X.
Okay, which we have on this one too.
Correct.
Okay. Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Good night.
What type of mixture did you identify this, or what type of data set did you identify this as you started your interpretation relative to the swab of the bath bar?
This is a low-level mixture of 3 or more people.
And when you say 3 or more people, what is that opinion based on?
That is based upon the fact that, if you recall, I said that if a mother and her children are on a mixed DNA profile, you'll have a maximum of 3 alleles. And we have some loci which have 4 alleles, such as this one right here, D8, and this one here, D5.
So at D8 and D5, we have evidence of contribution by, you said at least 3 people, or was it at least 2?
At least 3.
Okay. Were you able, well, let me ask you this first, I guess. Looking first at the top row on the left right there, at D3, is there any evidence of contribution by a foreign party or a third party for that matter?
Well, the only alleles there are 15, 17, and those are the alleles that Brandy and Tanaya and Javante all have.
Is there any evidence of masking going on there, or does it appear to be contribution from a single party?
Probably there's masking going on.
Okay. We do have equal peak heights there. We have 245 and 246 RFUs, correct?
Correct.
So what would that generally indicate?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't interpret based upon just one locus.
Sure.
If I was only looking at this locus, it looks like it's just one person.
You have to look at the sample as a whole.
Correct.
Okay. Which means taking into account, like you said before, D5 and D8, or maybe that's vice versa. I can't see those two.
That's D8 and D5, yes.
D8 on the second row and D5 on the bottom row.
Yes.
Okay. As you went through, were you able to identify potential contributors to this mixture?
Yes.
Who was included as a potential contributor to the mixture?
All of the victims were included.
Okay, so Brandy is included, the twins and Javante are all included.
Yes.
Okay. And no determination could be made regarding Mr. Segura, correct?
That's correct.
Is part of the reason why no determination can be made regarding Mr. Segura because there's only 2 allele or potential allele in this mixture that are foreign to the victims?
That's correct.
And both of those are starred allele, correct?
Yes.
So that's the 16 that's at 74 RFUs at
D8.
D8, and then down here at D5, we've got another foreign allele, the 12. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Under FDLE's interpretive guidelines, would it be proper to do inclusion statistics using those two foreign alleles?
No,
And why is that?
because they are under 100 RFUs.
And when FDLE went through the validation process for profiler and cofiler, it was deemed that for inclusion purposes, using start allele was not reliable. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
I'll take this one off. Let's talk briefly about States Exhibit 61, which is TPD 124, FDLE 114, a swab of the bathroom faucet. That
Okay.
is the common bathroom. State 61, TPD 124, FDLE 114. What kind of sample are we dealing with respect to that?
That's a mixture also of 3 or more, including all of the victims plus a foreign donor.
And with respect to the foreign donor identified there, were you able to exclude Mr. Segura?
Yes,
So that's DNA foreign to the 4 victims and Mr. Segura.
yes,
Okay. Was this one of the samples that you also compared to all those other people we talked about, the officers, family, friends?
yes,
Were all of them excluded as well?
yes, they were.
Okay. Actually, I wanted to go back, and I won't put the electropharogram back up, but on State 63, TPD 126, FDLE 116, the swab of the bath bar that we talked about a minute ago when we had the electropharogram up.
Yes,
After you did your initial testing in December of 2010, at some point later in 2011, were you able to make a determination about Brandy Peters' mother's potential contribution to that mixture?
yes, it was, excuse me, excluded.
Is that the one where, I think there was a report where you indicated, same as with Mr. Segura, no determination could be made about her potential contribution? This isn't the January 31st report, it's another supplemental.
Are you referring to the July 15th, 2011 report?
That may be the one. Yes, ma'am, that's the one.
And we're still talking about TPD 124 or 126?
I jumped back to State 63, TPD 116, FDLE 116. Sorry about the confusion.
TPD 126.
I have those backwards. TPD 126, FDLE 116, which is States Exhibit 63, the swab of the bath bar. Sorry.
All the individuals that I'd gotten buccal swabs from, which I had listed before, are excluded as contributors to this mixed DNA profile with the exception of Mary Richard Williams, and I can make no determination about the possible contribution of this individual.
And same as with Mr. Segura, that doesn't mean that she's there. It means you can't make any determination. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And part of the reason you can't make any determination, same as with Mr. Segura, is that parties related to that potential donor, Brandy Peters' mom, their DNA is potentially there. Is that true?
Her daughter and grandchildren, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Just like for Mr. Segura, his son is included as a contributor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about jumping back and forth like that. I'll go on to States Exhibit 65, TPD 128, FDLE 118. This is a swab of the toilet flush handle in the common bathroom. And I just wanted to ask about this particular sample. Mr. Segura was excluded as a potential contributor to that exhibit as well, correct?
I got very little results from that. We classify if we don't have anything callable, just as starred alleles, we call that DNA results only, which I can't exclude people from. I could make no determination for Brandy Peters and Tamaya and Tanaya and Javante, but all others are excluded.
Okay. Including Mr. Segura, right?
Yes.
Okay. How about State's Exhibit 67, which is TPD 130, FDLE 120, a swab of the exterior common bathroom door handle?
That was a partial profile mixture. Brandy and the girls are included. There is a Y component, but Javante is excluded, as is Henry Segura.
So we have foreign male DNA, that is DNA foreign to Mr. Segura, Javante, and the twins showing up there.
Yes.
Okay. All right, how about State's Exhibit 96, which is TPD 133, FDLE 123, a swab of the kitchen phone plug insert?
I did develop all 13 markers. There was no blood, no red-brown staining on that one. It's a mixture of Javante and Tanaya Tamaya. Peters are included in the mixture. Brandy Peters was excluded. Mr. Segura was excluded.
And this is also one that you were able to exclude all the family members, friends, and law enforcement officers, correct?
Yes.
Were you also able to identify foreign DNA in this sample as well?
Yes.
Was there enough for a full profile there, or no?
No.
So it's DNA foreign to the twins and Javante, who were listed as included, and also foreign to everybody else you had known standards for, including the defendant.
Yes.
Okay. I want to ask you as well about the sexual assault kit. 103HH is the State's exhibit number. TPD 92, FDLE 86. You indicated previously on direct that there was no semen identified, correct?
Correct.
And that will often be the case if you're doing a sexual assault kit where a prophylactic is used. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And what about swabbing for touch DNA? Is there any point in doing that in a location like that?
No.
And why not?
The only thing that is usually successful in a sexual assault case, which is not semen, is maybe breast swabs, if there might be saliva there. But there's too much DNA from the contributor to the vaginal swabs, the oral swabs, the anal swabs, to be able to get touch DNA. Touch DNA is very, very low level.
Same principle you were talking about before with Mr. Fuchs, where victims, if there's blood from the victim, that's going to, or at least has the potential to overwhelm any touch DNA from a different party, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There were also some exhibits that were not tested. I just kind of want to run through. This is from the list in your January 31st report. Pertaining to possible hairs. There were possible hairs identified, a number of them. None of those were tested, correct?
The January 31st report?
It's on page 5 of 11.
Which exhibit?
I don't have state exhibit numbers, but there's a paragraph there on page 5 where hairs are referred to, or potential hairs. TPD numbers 118, 67, 68, 7A, 8A, 9A, 11A, and 12A.
Okay.
You indicated that possible hairs were recovered from those items, correct?
Yes.
Would those have been hairs with a root that at least were potentially capable of being tested for DNA?
Well, I'll have to check each one of those.
Okay.
No, I did not examine that, so I can't tell you if there was a root or not.
And whether to test hairs or not, that's, you can make that determination on your own, but a lot of times if law enforcement wants you to test something like that, they can specifically request that you do that, correct?
Yes.
And nobody requested that you did do that in this case, correct?
I did a lot of other testing on the earring.
Right.
So that is why, yes.
Okay. A couple of other untested items I want to run through.
Did you want me to tell you about the other
I'm
hairs?
sorry?
The other
Sure, yeah,
hairs?
sure.
I think the exhibits that were listed as 8A, 9A, 154A, et cetera, were not from the house.
Okay, well, we can skip over those ones for now then.
Okay. The exhibits, which were FDLE 169 and 170, were from floor mats in a vehicle. Those were also not from the house.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about these individually then. There was a hair recovered from Brandy Peters' sock. Attached to her sock, it was states 103BB, TPD 84, FDLE 83. Was that a hair that had a root and was capable of testing?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time finding that one. Did you say it was TPD 84?
TPD 84, FDLE 83, yes ma'am. Also states 103BB. Identified as a hair attached to Brandy's sock.
What is the FDLE number on that one?
FDLE 83,
83?
yeah, TPD 84.
I'm sorry, but I can't find that one.
No, that's all right.
This is a copy, and so I don't know what happened to that page.
Okay. Let me ask you about States Exhibit 37, which is also TPD 37 and FDLE 59. That was a swab of blood, or apparent blood, on the sheets recovered from Brandy Peters' bedroom, the master bedroom in the house.
Yes,
That was not analyzed for touch DNA, correct? It was only the swab of the potential blood there,
it was a swab submitted.
not the actual sheets.
Correct.
So TPD didn't take a swab of the sheets for touch DNA. It was just
No.
that swab of potential blood.
Not that I received.
Okay. And same thing with States Exhibit 103EE, which is TPD 88, FDLE 133, Brandy Peters' yellow tank top. That wasn't swabbed for touch DNA and tested for touch DNA either, correct?
Was that TPD 83? Sorry.
TPD 88, FDLE 133.
The yellow tank top?
Yes, ma'am.
I did develop a partial DNA profile, and it did match Brandy Peters. In terms of DNA from touch, no, I don't believe so. I think it was, so blood soaked that no areas were available for touch.
Okay, that was a swab of blood then? Or did you have the actual shirt itself?
I think I had the actual shirt. Yes, I did.
Okay. What I want to ask you about where you did get some results, States Exhibit 32, TPD 12, FDLE 105. This is a purse from the master bedroom in the house. And I want to ask you specifically about the swab of the bottom and sides.
Okay.
You found that Brandy and Javante were included from the swab of those sections, correct?
Yes.
And also identified foreign DNA
Yes, it was a mixture of at least 3 individuals.
with the twins, Mr. Segura, cops, friends, family members, all those folks excluded from having contributed to the mixture, correct?
Correct.
All right. And I want to ask you some questions as well about the contents of the purse. And I don't have the state's exhibit numbers for these, but I'll go slow and ask you about them. You at some point tested the contents of the purse for DNA as well. I'll be referring to your October 7th, 2011 report.
October 7th.
Start with swab number. I guess first let me ask that. You took swabs from multiple different surfaces of the contents of the purse, correct?
Yes.
So let's talk about swab number 1 first. What were you able to identify there?
That was a swab of a wallet, and it demonstrated a mixture of at least 3 individuals, a partial DNA profile for the major contributor, and a partial mixed DNA profile for the minor contributors could be determined. The major DNA profile matches Brandy Peters. Tamaya, Tanaya are also included as possible contributors to the mixed DNA profile.
And there was a Y marker present in the sample as well, so you have some male DNA as well contributing, correct?
Yes, the DNA profile for the minor contributor is consistent with originating from at least 1 male individual. Javante Segura and Henry Segura both excluded as contributors to this minor DNA profile.
So that would be foreign male DNA on
Correct.
that swab as well?
Correct.
Okay. How about swab number 2?
That was also from the wallet. It demonstrated the presence of at least 2 individuals, and if I assume 2 donors to the mixture, a partial DNA profile for the major could be determined, which matches Brandy Peters, but the DNA results for the minor contributor were limited and is insufficient for inclusion purposes.
You were able to do exclusion though, right?
Right. It's consistent with originating from at least 1 male individual. Tamaya, Tanaya, Javante, and Henry Segura were all excluded as contributors.
So that's again foreign male DNA and not belonging to Javante or Mr. Segura on that item?
That's correct.
Okay. How about swab number 3?
That's another swab from the wallet, demonstrating the presence of at least 2 individuals. DNA profiles for major and minor contributors could not be determined. But the mixed DNA profile is consistent with originating from at least 1 female individual, and Brandy Peters is included as a possible contributor to the mixed DNA profile. Tanaya, Tamaya, Javante, and Henry Segura are all excluded.
Was this one that had indication of contribution by a male?
No.
So this is an all-female mixture, but the twins are excluded as well, of course, then, as Javante Segura and the defendant, Mr. Segura, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how about swab 4?
This is another swab from the wallet, demonstrating the presence of at least 2 individuals. Assuming 2 donors to the mixture, a partial DNA profile for the major contributor could be determined, which matches Brandy Peters. But the results for the minor contributor are limited and it's insufficient for inclusion.
This was another one with contribution from a male, correct?
Yes.
with both Javante Segura and the defendant, Mr. Segura, being excluded?
No, there was no determination I could make for that,
Oh, okay.
for either one of them.
Okay. And how about swab number 5?
This was also a mixed DNA profile from the wallet and contained at least 2 individuals, and assuming 2 donors, a complete DNA profile for the major contributor matched Brandy Peters, and there was a partial DNA profile for the minor contributor, which is consistent with being from a male. Tamaya, Tanaya, Javante, and Henry Segura are all excluded as contributors to the mixture.
So that's, again, foreign male DNA showing up there as the minor contributor.
That's correct.
Okay. There were something like 200 samples submitted to you in total in this case, correct? Roughly.
Yes. I didn't count them, but yes.
And Mr. Segura, other than his own buccal swabs, Mr. Segura was not included as a contributor, meaning that you were not able to identify him as a contributor to any one of these mixtures, correct?
That's correct.
No further questions for the witness.
Redirect.
You couldn't include them based upon FDLE, or if you basically couldn't call the alleles because of low RFUs based upon the standards from FDLE, correct? In certain issues.
There were some alleles that were between 50 and 100 that can't be used for inclusion.
But one you could not exclude them from, certainly, is the one from the grab bar of the bathtub in which children were drowning. Right next to the blood from Brandy Peters, correct?
I could not make a determination.
DNA, we talked about this earlier. Can't really say when it's left somewhere, correct?
Correct.
Someone who doesn't take care of their house, for instance, could have DNA for an extended period of time. They don't take clean.
That's possible.
You ever heard the term lack of evidence is not, or absence of evidence is not evidence of absence?
Have I heard that term?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it much.
Okay. Would it mean that because there is not DNA found from Henry Segura at this place that he's never been at the home?
I would say probably not.
That's not what it would mean, wouldn't it? DNA really isn't a situation that shows if somebody was there or somebody was not there. It's whether their DNA is left behind, correct?
Correct.
In order to leave behind your DNA, you have to have some sort of bodily exclusion. Don't have to, but there's touch DNA, as you said, would give off very, very low numbers. Or in some cases, normally what you would expect the higher numbers are sweat, blood, things of that nature.
Yes.
Okay. So again, just because his DNA is not there doesn't mean he wasn't there, correct?
Yes.
All right. And in fact, DNA can be transferred from one person to another, can't it?
Yes.
So if I shook your hand right now and then walked out and put my hand on that doorknob right there, there's a chance that I'm going to leave your DNA on that doorknob, even though you never touched it.
Possible.
So I know, and I'm getting to the point of DNA, as much as we've heard about DNA, it's not an exact science when it comes to certain things like that, right?
Well, you have to be careful what conclusions you make from it.
Correct. Okay. For instance, a perfect example would be somebody who doesn't clean their house very well, and you find a mixed DNA sample there at a carpet spot. There's no telling when that second piece of DNA was left, right?
Are we talking about a blood stain there?
Yeah, there's a blood stain that was there, if I remember correctly, your testimony, and I can give you that number. It's going to be, I believe it was State 17, TPD number 8. The major contributor was Tamaya Tanaya, and there was a minor contributor with an allele at one loci. I believe was the testimony. If I've got the right one.
Yes, it was a mixture, and Tamaya were the major contributor.
So what could theoretically happen then, hypothetically of course, is that the DNA from the blood droplet from Tanaya and Tanaya could have fallen there. Someone else's DNA was already there, and therefore you have a mixture. Is that not correct?
Yes?
Again, can't tell when things are found or when things are left there.
No.
And we talked about degradation and things like that, and certain things can be left for a extended period of time, right?
Yes.
For instance, if DNAs are found on a phone that is not operational, you would expect that it was probably left back when the phone was operational and not when it wasn't. Nobody uses a dead phone, do they?
They might pick it up.
They might. But typically you find on the handset especially is when somebody's talking on the phones when they're leaving their DNA, right?
Probably that's so.
Yeah. Again, can't say when it was left. What you can say is that it's there or not. And there's no telling, even with a mixture, when one person contributed versus another contribution, correct?
Correct.
Doesn't mean they're contributed at the same time.
Correct.
As you said, you have to be careful with the conclusions, correct?
Correct.
But what you do look at is how they affect and in proportion with other issues as to the crime scene. Take it all together, correct?
I'm not a crime scene investigator. I don't know.
Fair enough. No further questions.
Any juror have a question of this witness? All right, if not, you can step down. We need to keep her further.
Yes, Your Honor, she can retain it.
All right, be ready, retained under the rule. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, this time state's going to call Sergeant Corbett. We'd ask for about a 5-10 minute break to set it up for his presentation.
5-minute breaks don't work very well. We don't get anybody. We'll take 10 minutes.
All right, thank you.